Hi, friends. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It's your favorite co host who doesn't shut up about her coven, popping in to tee up this thought because my better half is gallivanting around Miami eating croquetas without me. So, subsequently, I'm hiding behind an audio only intro because I am in my pajamas with wet hair, as if you haven't seen me like that before on this podcast, about to run out the door to have some holiday family time myself. So let me not take too long because this episode, y'all, truly makes my heart explode. Cyrus Veyssi is a face you'll recognize, if not from your For You page, then certainly as the one carrying TikTok Fridays on their back. Cyrus recently moved from one side of content creation to the other, so from a marketing background and now taking ownership in front of the camera. Thank goddesses everywhere for this, and becoming everyone's favorite Iranian American non-binary content creating powerhouse. Cyrus is such a safe and silly space on the internet and also loves humor as a coping mechanism. So, they became fast friends of the pod. And we had such a fun time chatting with them. Our thoughts covered everything from the content creation paradigm of running like a business, but also protecting your moral values, to some favorite coping mechanisms, to unpacking immigrant parent dynamics, to advice for allies, and truly so much more. We seriously had a blast, and I know this convo will brighten your day. So make sure to bless your feed by following Cyrus on TikTok and IG, and please give a warm TMV familia welcome to Cyrus.
Can I just tell you that my sister, who is the type of person that doesn't have TikTok but only has Instagram, and so she'll send me reels 5 months later.
Yes. Yeah.
All she does is send me your stuff, and I've told her 400 times. I'm like, they're coming on my podcast. They're coming on my podcast. Forgets, sends it again.
Doesn't know.
Love that. Well, I can't wait. This is in part dedication to her then.
Yeah. I'm like, you see, Issa, I'm doing something important.
Plus, our whole community is going to freak out because we do this thing on our Instagram called TikTok Fridays. Humor is our favorite coping mechanism around here in this family. So every Friday, all we do is post humorous coping TikToks and kind of mental health
funny TikToks. Fun.
You are single-handedly holding it down for TikTok Friday.
No way.
You're carrying it this weight on your back. Our community is going to die.
You know what? That is so helpful to hear because I'm I'll look at my TikTok and I'll be like, the fuck am I saying? Sometimes I'm just because I try and be very self-aware, but sometimes I just get lost in it and you kind of just don't know how people are receiving your content. So I'm thrilled to hear that.
Oh no, we love it.
I'm going to start with this already. Gabby, roll your eyes at me. Have you read Rick Rubin's book?
Oh God.
No, eye roll. I have not read. No, I have not.
I think
I have to learn how to read. No, Rick Rubin. Hold on. Rick Rubin.
I have to learn how to read. Is that what you just said?
A way of being.
No, I have not read his book. No.
You are going to love it. Already, if you're in that whole, I make something and I feel good and I put it out, but then how am I being perceived? And that, all these kind of art, creativity, process questions, this is the Bible. You are going to fall in love with it.
Okay. I'm adding to my queue.
Everyone take a shot because I cannot shut up about that book on this podcast. So
it is a good book though to microdose. In the morning, read a chapter. Because it's the chapters are a page or two long.
It's poetry almost. Yeah.
Easy. Okay, I will. That sounds good. No, but I'm very excited. I'm excited for everyone to hear this. This will be so fun.
Okay, first of all, you two are matching, so jealous.
But whatever.
I usually do a little bit of color, but I realize it sort of washes out sometimes with the natural light. When I do black, I just sort of pop. So
that's true.
I think notes, everyone.
Easy peasy.
And it's chic. When is black ever not? You know what I mean? It's just easy.
Not chic. Truly. I went to an event last night and I wore green and I was like, oh my God. I went to a sample sale in New York and I bought this beautiful Dion Lee corseted top. It's like winter green, which is fine. Mm-hmm. But I was like, whatever, I'll wear color once. And then I'm looking at myself on the step and repeat. And I'm like, I look like a fucking tree because I'm 8 in these stupid fucking heels that I'm wearing. And I'm wearing a green top. I look like an oak tree. It was
Wait, I don't believe that for a second though, because you have golden tones. So I feel like the gold with the green would
it really helped. But then I look like a Christmas tree because I'm not wearing And then my boyfriend, he was like, you're a monster. Like I was like literally, but you know what? I've also noticed if I just wear black and one pop of color, it's better than trying to do like 1,000 things. Because I'm not a stylist. I'm not a fashion girly. I'm really not. So black it is. 99%.
You always look great. You always look great.
I think I pull it together as best as I can for someone who just doesn't have that eye, I think, personally. Beauty and skincare, I got. It's just the fashion is not my forte, even though I love posting about fashion.
I was going to say, you definitely have an eye. But that's fun because then you get to experiment and evolve it over time. You know what? At least you're playful. Like nothing is more boring than being in stuff. What's the quote from Dolly Parton? God forbid I'm fashionable. She's like, that's the easiest thing in the world to be. Like who would ever, I stoop so low to be fashionable. That's what it is. God forbid I stoop so low to be fashionable.
I think it's, and then part of it too is I this is really interesting. I heard someone say a lot of people, especially if you grew up very sort of like gender dysmorphic, or like if you went to a school that was really heavy on like gender norms, and like I had a dress code going up, like you don't really develop your style. So it's I don't know what my style is. It's like literally until 18, and then it was like I'm 29 now, and like a couple weeks ago I was like, I don't know why I can't. And someone said that to me, and I was like, oh my God, it's because I never had the opportunity to like develop my style. Absolutely. So what you said about like I'm growing into it is my style journey right now.
Well, then even as our mental health changes, is that what you're going to say, Gabby?
Sorry. Well, no, I was just saying you fucking throw the pandemic into the mix and people are just in pajamas and sweats. And 3 years later, you're like, what do I like?
I know.
Haven't seen my body.
No, it's no. And then bodies change all the time. A very fascinating world of fashion that I'm starting to become more self-aware about.
Oh, that's going to be fun to watch you evolve into that then.
It is. And I always, it was so funny when growing up, I'll give you obviously the background and we'll get into it all, but I didn't do this to become a creator and like an influencer. And like, it comes with like everything. It comes with like, you get a team, you get a publicist, like you just that. And I have a wonderful team, but I don't have an assistant. I don't have hair and makeup. I don't have a style. Like I do everything myself. Sometimes I get hair to come and do it for me because I usually can't. But what I've learned is I would see people like shell out on stylists and be like, who would ever do? And then now I'll be like, oh, I get it.
Oh, I need this.
It takes the, you know what I mean? And then I'm doing red carpets and I'm so confused. It's like, I'm like, do people not run out of outfits? And I'm like, stylist.
Yeah. Okay. Until you want to pay for a stylist, I have a friend that also pops the fuck off on TikTok. Her name's Allison Bornstein. And she kind of blew up for the help you find your 3 words.
Oh my God.
And kind of like build your style and kind of your like style identity around that.
Oh, interesting.
She has like a whole like closet categorization thing. She did like a mental health and fashion collab with me in like 2019. She's amazing.
Oh, wow. Okay, I'm really into this aesthetic. Yeah.
She like gives you the tools to do it yourself.
Yeah, that's what I need to do. That's what I need to do. That's what I need to do.
Meadow and I talk a lot about like, we're big Pinterest board girlies over here, and love, like I realized this year, because every time I'd put on an outfit after the pandemic, I was like, I feel awful. I feel like shit, don't look good, it's not right. And then I was like, oh my God, why do I not look right? And I'm like, wait, because I just moved to LA and I'm now 27, but I'm like trying to dress like every other 22-year-old bitch that's like shopping on Melrose. And I'm like, nope.
It's so or like I was going through my shopping cart and I was like putting in like corseted crop tops and shit. And then I was like, boyfriend, I'm like, I'm not a 22-year-old twink. Like, who do I think I am?
Literally.
30. I'm like, I need to like start dressing. And no, dress however the fuck you want. But also for me, it just wasn't working anymore. Like I had an era where I could wear that and be like, fine. Versus now, I'm trying to elevate a little bit. Anyway.
I'm with you. I'm like,
I'm going to say one more thing about it before we move on. But like, because we even are going to ask you something about this later, but we talk a lot about masculine and feminine energies and how they live in all of us and blah, blah, blah. And I've been very open about like healing sex trauma and like getting more in touch with my feminine energy from healing sex trauma. And like, I used to never want to wear dresses, didn't like skirts, whatever. And now I'm like, throw out everything in my closet. I want to be so girl, like, I feel like your healing journey informs that too in a crazy way.
100%. It's like me with like, I was forced to wear collared shirts my whole life. And then in college, I was like, fuck every collared shirt I'll ever see. Fuck it, burn it to the ground. And now I'm like, I love an oversized colored shirt. Like it's like
Right.
it's like, do you know what I
So
mean?
good.
Yes.
It's an interesting navigation into how you perceive the things that you wear and how other people perceive them. I think that's a good point.
100%.
Totally.
Even thinking about like what you just said, like you were forced to wear those things.
Yeah.
There's so many
I'm like, don't tell me
outfits.
what to do. Like, let me just figure it out.
Mm-hmm. No, exactly. I fully understand you. I digress because I'm like about to go
I'm
into the
so
whole.
excited already.
My brain literally was just like the abusive ex-boyfriend that made me wear this. That did it. Like, no, we
Yeah.
need to move on.
Reel it in.
I'm like, please, let's move on.
We're all
Okay.
too excited.
Let me just tell you, we start every TMV episode asking our guests what they're currently unpacking. It's become a little shtick within our community. So, Cyrus, what are you currently unpacking?
I am currently unpacking why my imposter syndrome is so awake now that I'm a content creator. Because to give you a little bit of a background, I worked on the other side of the industry for 7 years. I worked at a fairly corporate branding agency, marketing agency that I adored. I loved them so much. I was there for 7 years, and I was like a strategy director, a strategy supervisor. I worked with brands to like do everything from strategy creative to campaigns. And then during the pandemic, I started to create content that just blew up. My lane on Instagram was more beauty, skincare, wellness, aesthetic. My lane on TikTok was more comedy, self-confidence, dating, that kind of a thing. And then I realized really quickly, like, you can put me in a boardroom with like CMOs, CEOs, procurement for like a big tech brand or like a financial institution, and I will tell you exactly what the fuck you need to be doing. I was like 23 pitching like some of the biggest industry brands in the country and globally. But then I show up to a red carpet now and I'm like, you probably don't want, like, I probably wasn't invited. Like, it's like I create this imposter syndrome. So I'm trying to unpack what it is about that is missing. Because I always say to myself, like, I think confidence is a muscle. Like, you just have, like, no one, like, I truly think it's something that you constantly have to work on. Like anything, like if you want strong arms, you work them out. I think confidence is a muscle. I think creativity is a muscle. But for me, like, I don't know why I feel so like quote unquote weak in that side of my muscle when it comes to this industry sometimes. So I'm currently unpacking that and I'm thinking a lot about it. I'll like talk to myself in my apartment when I'm walking around being like, why is that? Do you know what I mean?
Well, those,
Yeah,
I feel like the two
100%.
things you said go hand in hand, where when it's something that's not you focused, but it's about a brand, it's about storytelling, it's about something bigger than yourself, you have so much confidence in your like intellect and self-awareness to speak to that. But when it comes to your like the entertainment, the idea, the concept is based directly on your life, your belief, your philosophy, your idea, like that's a whole other ball game to unpack, like getting perceived by it, building that self-worth in that area, like that.
And I'm a confident person. I've worked on it for many, many,
for
many
sure.
years. It's just funny. It's like sometimes I'm in rooms now as a creator and I can't believe that I'm in those rooms, and I'm in those rooms for a reason, but I'm still not convinced. I'm like, I'm not fucking convinced. And they're like, we don't know how to help you. Do you know what I mean? I'm like, I have to help myself to be able to get to that place. So I'm doing a lot of work. And I know I'm doing a lot of work because I literally like 2 hours out of the day, I'm like talking to myself in my apartment. My boyfriend's like, who the fuck are you talking to? I'm like, I'm literally just talking out loud.
I'm working it out.
Like, it's not about you right now.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm trying to figure it out right now. And I think it's going to be a journey, as many things are. But that's right now. It's like, it's interesting. I talked to, do you know Teffy Pessoa?
Oh, she's like one of my best friends.
Tiffy is if I had a sister, it would be her. Like, we were chatting, we were FaceTiming yesterday, and I was telling her about it, and she was just so grounding and and it's just like, I think it helps for me to talk things out. Like, I think that's what I need to do, because I really don't like asking for help, and I really have an issue with it, but I'm also learning how to ask for help now when I need it.
I mean, Teffy, we love her, friend of the pod. She's my Miami sister. We're like
we
this.
love Miami sisters. Oh my
love
God.
it. No, she's the fucking best. And she really is that person too that I'll call like when I'm having those intense like imposter syndrome moments. Curious question over here, because you started in corporate and I started in really corporate America as well.
Yeah.
Did you start as like an assistant?
Okay, so
because I have a reason for that question, by the way.
Right out of college, I moved to New York. I got a part-time job at Paper Magazine as a marketing intern. And then I was in the process of potentially becoming an assistant for their creative director at the time, Drew Elliott, who you'd love. He's at Mac now. And then I immediately got a position as like an intern at the branding marketing agency that I was at. So I was never an assistant, but the positions that I was in were so entry level that it felt like it. And when I worked in fashion, I worked at a very, very big, a very prolific luxury fashion house in-house. It was very Devil Wears Prada and assistant-y.
We have very similar resumes. We really do. I started interning fashion. And then my first job out of college, I was Amy Astley's assistant, Architectural Digest.
Yes.
So, okay. I ask you that question because coming from like the big like internet, Oscar de la Renta did the whole shtick, like all of those internships and then being an assistant, and not only being assistant, but being an assistant in like journalism and in magazine land, I was constantly conditioned, as you are and as you need to do, like to be, it's like you're grateful to be in the room. You're grateful to be in the room. Thank you so much for talking to me. Like as a journalist, like if I'm interviewing someone, like I'm grateful for their time, obviously. And I got so conditioned to be like, thank you so much for letting me be in this space. Like, thank you. And then being someone's assistant, like you have to be like this, like very polite, whatever, that I found has leaked into now being my own boss when I'm speaking with people and it's a more like even playing field. I do that a lot too, where I'm like, oh, thank you. Like, it's okay. Like, like, you know, I back down. So that's why I ask you that of like, I wonder if that had any impact on the way that you move.
It definitely did. And I'll tell you why. For me in particular, so my family's from Iran and they moved to the US, and my family had a very successful assimilation to the US. My dad worked a great job. My mom had a jewelry store in Boston. She was very creative. And then when she had my brother and I, she was a very like amazing stay-at-home mom. She still does creative outlets. My dad still works here and there. But like I grew up with a lot of culture infused into my life. So like while yes, I grew up in the US, and I actually like very radically jumped into like boarding school, very like white neighborhood community situation. My upbringing in the summers was also in France. So like we learned Farsi and French when we were younger. So I spoke French. So all of that to say, I just remember working at this fashion house, and there was a group of, you know, senior colleagues that I was invited to go to coffee, and we're talking and they're like, oh, we got coffee. And they're like, oh, like, it's not it's no like De Mago, which is a cafe in Paris whatever. And then like one of this fucking he looked over at me, he was like, it's this cafe in Paris in the 6th arrondissement. And I'm like, I used to go there when I was 11 to smoke steaks. I was like, you don't have to, not 11, I'm kidding. But I was like, I grew up like I always felt like nobody was because of what I looked like and what people's perception of my background was, they thought that I'd never be in the same space as them. And if not, like one day, someone came in, this was at a different job that I was at, and this sort of like luxury leader came in, very like chic woman. She came in, we started to speak French, I spoke it fluently, and then my colleagues were just like, oh my God, like
flabbergasted.
Like, and I'm like, that's fair, but I'm also like, yeah, bitch, don't underestimate people. I'm like, I'm not. So I think I also was conditioned to feeling like I wasn't welcome. I think especially in fashion, it's very political. It's honestly more about the agencies than it is about the fashion houses that I've learned, especially with building relationships. I'm very grateful that I'm taking up space in the luxury world, like with beauty, with skincare, and now with fashion. But I also now am able to see that it's a mutual relationship. It's transactional. I'm providing you with my likeness and who I am, and that there are very few non-binary creators, let alone any creators that are doing work in luxury fashion the way that I'm doing it. So I'm providing you with something the same way that you are with me. I think the mentality that you're talking about when I was junior, I never would have thought about it that way. Like I truly just, again, to your point, I was just conditioned into thinking, one, you need to earn your spot or you don't deserve to be here. And then two, even if you're there, you don't quite get it. And I was like, yeah, I do. I was like, I do. So but again, that took me years to find that voice. And I will say having a platform is a power that has translated into so many points of confidence for me in a way that I kind of don't wish it does, but it does. Like having a platform is such a privilege, and it has tremendously helped me in so many different ways. And not even in like the influencer way, just in other ways.
This was literally going to be my last question for you, but you kind of set me up beautifully because I really loved your conversation on the She, Her, They podcast. And you
Yeah.
got in a little bit to this kind of like what happens when you start working with fashion houses or luxury or big corporate places that like only want you if you present certain femme or like only
Yeah, it's
kind of
interesting.
validate certain aspects of your identity in this way, or maybe don't see
Mhm.
you fully like you're kind of describing.
Yeah.
And I'm so interested to hear that balance in terms of like where are your lines between at some point it's like get your fucking coin. Like if they're going to pay you and put money in your pocket, like there is that aspect of like make your bag, but then where is the line of like do you ever feel like you're abandoning your like multidimensional self? Like it's a
Yeah.
lot to hold. That's a lot to
Mhm.
hold.
I think the answer is so complex. But I think there's so
Yeah.
much truth in what you're asking. Like it's like many things that are true at once. It's like
Exactly.
I know that a lot of the brands that I work with want to see me as the sort of feminine, beautiful, high like luxury, makeup done sort of person. And
Right.
I don't think that my non-binariness is validated by that. I think me
Mm.
existing like right now, I'm good. Like I
Yeah.
feel the way that I feel. So what I did was I try not to take it too seriously. Like I think for me it was like I was like if a brand isn't going to see me the way, and I was like it's a business. I think I've really learned, and I think part of it is there's no way at the level of what I'm doing for me to not have to sacrifice something. It's just not possible, right? Like you have to sacrifice certain elements. But what I will say is, again, as I've grown and as I've been blessed with opportunities, I can say no now. Like I can say no to things that fundamentally don't work. And I think a lot of
Mhm.
people don't realize how often I say no to like bags, to like
Mm.
bags. And I'm like, it's just, it doesn't feel authentic. I don't
Yep.
fucking like this brand. I don't like what they stand for. I'm not doing this. But
Yeah.
I will say it's interesting because there are very few of us who are creators that are non-binary and also just Middle Eastern, first generation
Mhm.
here. I'm like, I'm exhausted talking about my identities. It's so funny. It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
like relax. But I have all these intersectional identities. I have now found a way where like before, perfect example, if a brand wanted to take me out to like a lunch or a dinner, 100% of the time I would spend hours getting ready, looking the way that I knew that they wanted me to look at.
Mm.
Mm.
Now I'm like, I'm tired. If they want to work with me, they want to work with me. Me going to a dinner and not being the most beautiful perception of what they think,
Mhm.
at the end of the day, it is what it is. They've seen my content. They've seen what I can do. I deserve to not have to force myself to look a certain type of way for them to like feel gratified and be like,
You
oh
deserve
my
to
God.
show up as yourself.
You know
Right.
what I mean? I'm like,
Where
of course,
you are. Yeah.
event. If it's an event or like a dinner with like, of
Sure,
course I
sure,
want to
sure.
impress people, but I'm no longer feeling like I need to do it in order for me to succeed in this industry, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
At
It
least
makes
all the time.
complete
And
sense.
that builds your power. Like I feel
Yes.
like that it's
Yeah.
speaking of like finding kind of your voice and busting that imposter syndrome, like I feel like
Yeah.
that really builds your power.
Totally.
I saw a TikTok yesterday, which is like kind of a random example, but it was a computer scientist talking about AI. And he was like, you have to understand people that are like, oh, I don't want to pay for like the high quality AI. I'll just use the free one. He's like, you're in a market economy. So there's
Yeah.
always going to be a consumer. It can either be you or the person that wants to manipulate you. And like
Oh,
your
totally.
perception of like not taking it that seriously and being
Mhm.
like, I either get this or it's enough that I don't want to work with them. Like it kind of reminds me of that just like acceptance for what it fucking is to be in business and like
And
doing
that's,
your job.
and it's like, here's the thing. There is a lot that I could have done in the past year specifically to grow a lot faster. There's a lot I could have said yes to. There are a lot of opportunities that I could have just gone with and bit my tongue and done. There's a lot of content I could have created that just isn't me that would have, I think, catapulted me into a different level of metrics. I'm fine for that growth to be slower if it means that I'm able to hold on to like at least the fabric of who I am.
Yourself.
Because here's the thing,
Exactly.
I will never now seeing it. You do you. Everybody, but and the days where I think to myself, oh my God, like why I haven't grown on TikTok. Like, what is it? I don't want to do the videos that I know are going to go viral sometimes because I don't want to say the, and I'm just like, it's fine. Look at my career. Look at where I'm at and what I'm doing. It's like, it's one of those things where it's like, you just have to decide. You have to decide what you want to do, how transactional you want to be. I mean, I was on this trip and I was in Paris and I was with a bunch of creators that live in LA and they're talking about they're very like, as if it's normal, like they have like some of them just these relationships with other creators that's just based on collabing on content. And I'm like, that makes sense. But I'm also like, that's why. Like I've never even thought about doing that. I haven't even thought about like doing collabs with my friends who are creators here. I haven't done a single one. And it's a lot of it is to build each other's platforms and to like, you know, so I always, and even like when I'm at an event and my team, who I love, they're like, you know, snap a pic with this celebrity. And I'm like, it's so like it let's do it. Like, now I do it and I get it and it's gonna build engagement. Of course, those are the videos and photos that are gonna go viral, but it's like not who I am. So I'm trying to find that balance. And I think it's okay for me to grow slower if it means that I'm able to like consistently hold on to parts of myself that I think are the most important. Because if everything crashes and burns, my relationships are the most important thing.
Absolutely. Meadow and I talk about this all the time in terms of just our own career trajectory. Like, of course, the podcast and the way that we're growing this platform and doing this, but in terms of our own separate careers, we think about that all the time. Because like you said, there's so many things, there's always a new thing to grow. And there's so many creators out there that are doing the thing to grow. And I talked about this with, do you know Chrissy Rutherford?
Love.
Okay.
Love. She's the best.
Yeah, she's the
so
best.
she's been an amazing like friend, mentor for me, just as someone who left editorial and is now just like fully doing her thing. And I talked to her last time I was in New York and she was like, I never worry about my longevity. She's like, because I'm not here for a flash in the pan career. And I'm not chasing.
And look at her career.
And it's going to continue. It's going to continue to grow and it's going to continue to flourish because it's authentically coming from who she is. Now, there's a boundary between like being who you are and then also being like the stubborn person that's like, I don't want to do that because whatever. Like, no, you're a business person at the end of the day. You are your business and you have to be strategic. But there is complete honor in holding on to who you are as a human because like you said, when it's all gone or when you retire or whatever the fuck, you still know that you have the integrity of who you are behind it.
100%. I'll quote this and I'm going to misquote it. I mean, it was something along this lines, but I was watching an interview with Ziwe, comedian,
Love
who
her.
I admire very much. I hope I get to meet her one day. She was getting interviewed and this was when her show was blowing up and it was whatever. And they were asking like, oh my, like, what's it like being like, how did you become this overnight sensation? And she was like, oh my God, it was so easy. It only took 10 years. And it was like, it was like a very like, it was like, you just, you know,
I've been busting my ass for 10 years. Fuck you.
What's happening is you're seeing like creators and content creators and influencers blow up overnight and you're seeing their careers. And I think I always try and remind myself, like, that's not normal. That's not normal. It's not a bad thing. I'm just saying it's not normal. If I hold myself to that standard, I'm like, what am I? It's the same with like, when I think about it to myself, I was like, when I was in the corporate world, did I get promoted every week? No. There were years that I just did. Like, I'm like, it doesn't make sense for me to do that. And like, for me, a promotion is obviously very different now, but I'm like, it's okay. My dad always says this. He's like, it's okay to not win a gold medal every day. It doesn't need to be your best day. You don't need to girl boss and fucking whatever. Like, it's not realistic. It happens to some people, but like, I think it's helpful to at least self-awarely be like, this pattern and this balance just doesn't work for me right now.
Nothing is linear. Healing, careers, that like nothing is fucking linear.
I'm so glad that we didn't even know the conversation was going to go here. And I'm so glad it's gone here because I think we get so many questions from our audience about just seeing it's not natural how much we see of other people's lives these days. Like it's natural for us now because it's where we're at, but like, it's not something that we are used to by any means. And what we need to remember is that we're seeing a snapshot of the most successful part of somebody's life. Like we're seeing the peak. We're seeing that right now. And I was just listening to Jay Shetty, who we fucking love.
Right.
And Jay Shetty was having a conversation with, I believe his name is Adam Grant. And they were talking about this exact concept of like, you're seeing just this end result that is like years. I mean, Jay Shetty was, I mean, not only a monk, but was doing for a decade, was
Mhm.
going and speaking and teaching and doing all these things. And now we're seeing this remarkable man who we can listen to his interviews and be like, oh my God, how is he that? Like I listen to him, I'm like, how does he think of, how is he this good of an interview? How does he connect with it?
Yeah.
And not to take away anything from how amazing he is, but I'm also like, oh, he was doing this for
He put in the work.
over a decade.
Well,
Yeah.
the number one thing when I get asked, how do you deal? Because a lot of negativity and hate comments, like, how do you deal with it? How are you so good at absorbing hate comments and I'm like, I have, there is nothing that I have not seen in my DMs. Like truly, and that's the thing. It's obviously horrible, but realistically, I have been on social media for 8 years. I've not been a
Yeah.
creator for 8 years. I've been a creator for about a year and a half, 2 years,
Right.
full time half a year. But I'm like, it's just experience. Like I'm like I'm just I sometimes I'm like, what do you mean? I'm like, I get hundreds of these a day. Like I think it's one of those situations where it's like people don't see how often it's happening, so they just think I'm not, or like even with confidence. I'm like, you don't get to see me in my lows because I don't share those because I also really need to keep boundaries. You don't see
Sure.
me. You don't see me talking about like weight. You don't see me talking about body things because I'm not comfortable talking about those things. So you only see the parts of me that I post when I'm confident. You don't see the
Right.
parts of me that are like very vulnerable. And that's just a boundary that I've created, but especially with hate comments. And the funny thing is I share my hate comments and sometimes I like clap
Right.
back at people I post it. The comments that I share, sometimes I get messages from like people and they're like, oh my God, I can't imagine like these words like, that someone would write them. And I'm like, girl,
You're like, that's a 1 on the scale,
Yeah.
babe.
no. That's a 1 on this scale. If
Yeah.
I shared, I think my account would get banned. Like I
Yeah.
truly do. I think just by posting it, I would. So again, I think it's relative, and I completely agree. It's like I have experience. I have
Yeah.
so much experience in this now,
Yeah.
especially with the hate comments,
Mhm.
and also just absorbing energies from people online, and it just takes time.
Yes.
It takes time.
And I guess with that exposure, I mean, it becomes so obvious that it's a projection that it's just like trite and boring. Like, frankly,
Yeah.
we made a point to like talk about this privately. I wasn't even going to say this, but like, we really didn't even want to ask you that question because I feel like you get asked that on every single podcast. And like, how fucking boring. Because like, how long have you been
No, it's
dealing with those?
okay.
How much do you see them? Like, we don't need, like, how many
I
times do you need to talk about like your, you know what I mean? Like, why
Yeah.
feed into the
No,
energy? It's such a projection of them and has nothing to do with you. Like, that's
well, that's what I'm
boring.
saying. And I've never shared that on a podcast. It's just I'm like that's a brick. This is a
Yeah.
phone. Like I don't know what
Yeah.
to tell you. Like I
Yeah.
truly I don't know. Okay,
Yeah. Different realities. Okay.
it's just different realities. And I
Yeah.
will say this is what I always say to people because I also don't know if I'm fully invested in believing that you just can't be affected. I don't think that's true.
Right. Right.
Like
Yeah.
the way that I describe it is for a really long time, I would, let's say, use an example. I get a hate comment, it would affect me and then it would impact me. Impact meaning I
That
would
is
then
such a good
make a
distinction.
decision. I would make a decision based
Yeah.
off of it. I would
Yeah.
take down the photo. I might look in the mirror and be like, oh, wait, hold on, maybe it impact.
Right.
Now, I'm not going to say it doesn't affect me. Seeing hundreds of
You can,
comments
yeah.
affects me, but it
Yeah, of
doesn't
course.
impact me. It doesn't
That
like,
is, whew,
it's
That's incredible.
after a minute or two, I'm
Yeah.
on to the next thing. That's
yeah.
why when I get hate, and especially when I see it happening to younger people and I see them being impacted by it, I'm like, just give me the hate because it's fine. Like I'm good with it. It won't impact me. I'm way too grown for this.
Yeah.
So that's the only other thing. I don't think I've really distinguished that. And I think,
That's
you
a
know, you hear people
beautiful
be like,
distinction.
"The comments don't like affect me at all. And I'm like, they affect
Right.
me. They don't
Right.
impact
Yeah.
me, if that makes sense.
That makes complete sense.
It makes so much sense. It's so beautifully said. Let's use that as an opportunity to get into coping. Because I know we said already humor is a coping mechanism. Obviously, your TikTok page is like riddled with comedy that fucking lights up our life and single-handedly carries
Thank
TikTok Friday on
you.
your back.
Sure
Love
does.
it.
How, I want to know, like, how were you taught to cope with big emotions or triggers or that effect when you were younger? And how do you cope with it now?
When I was younger, I was not as self-aware around like what anxiety and panic was.
Mm.
So when I was younger, I was really carefree and I did everything and I had no anxiety and I was just chilling and living my life. And then the second I like became self-aware about sexuality and gender, my mom calls it my anxiety monster. Like my monster came out. Like it was my anxiety monster and it happened. And I just like I would get really big panic attacks and I would get a lot of anxiety and it's mostly anticipatory. Like that's my anxiety is like, what if? But then what I realized was years later, I would find myself in situations that were so ridiculous and my anxiety became so powerful that I would laugh. Like to give you an example, I was one time I had to make this train. I had to make the train home. And I was like, I have stomach issues. So I was like, oh my God, what if I get stomach issues?
Every
And
hot
then
girl
I get
does.
the train. And then I'm like, oh my God. I was like, oh my God, the anxiety gave me stomach issues. So I'm like running to the bathroom in this horrible train station.
Oh
And I'm
no.
I'm shitting and I'm like, oh my God. Like, I miss my train. I'm like
Yeah.
drenched in sweat. And then I remember
Yeah.
just like stopping and I start dying of laughter.
I feel like this is the funniest thing that's ever happened to me.
It's just so funny. Like I think
Yeah.
and then I'll never forget that. And then I think from then on, I just started to laugh. Like I started to laugh at things and I was like, maybe I can use humor to just to just get through those types of things. And I'll never forget. There's a wonderful makeup artist creative. Her name is Katie Jane Hughes.
Love her. Yeah.
I adore her. The one thing that she taught me was interesting about anxiety is it was sort of like when it's happening, imagine it getting worse and telling it, being like,
Come here. Get
that's
closer.
all you fucking got. Like,
Yeah.
okay, like this is it. And that has really helped me. And it's like, it's that developed my comedy character on TikTok. Everything, it's like I see, when it comes to relationships, when it comes to dating, people, it's so funny because I look at the videos and I'm like, delete his fucking number. And it's so silly, but it's actually coming from a place of like the conversations I used to have with myself where I would have anxiety over some stupid fucking guy. And then it was so bad that I would just laugh. So I think I'm trying to now, the way that I am in my life is I have been through emotionally a lot that I don't talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way that I've made it through is laughing at myself, laughing at how ridiculous the situations is. It's the only way to do it. And I take myself very seriously. I think that one of the best pieces of advice I've ever gotten, and people ask me this all the time, they're like, how, like from a career perspective, or like, how do I, like, I'm going through this journey, this self-care journey. Do you have any advice? And I'm like, the only thing you can say is take yourself seriously. Like, but that doesn't mean like, don't laugh and joke. It just means take your anxiety seriously. Like take the moments where you need to create boundaries seriously. Like I think Gen Z is so wonderful, but I talk to a lot of these kids that follow me and they're like kids, like 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds, like young Gen Zers that are like boop, like self-destructing again. And I'm like, okay, but like, let's talk, like why? Like, so I think the combination of comedy and also this empowerment of like, you're much more capable than you think you are is what has developed my personhood on social media, because I will never not take myself seriously, but I will fucking be the first person to laugh at how ridiculous a situation is, if that makes sense.
But
oh my gosh.
I think that comedy like helps you meet the present moment of facing that thing without so much like pain and baggage. Like
100%.
I've never said this on the podcast. Gabby and I always say, we have the most fucked up humor ever because people with trauma always do.
Yep.
And so we always make jokes about like the level of which we'll share on the podcast. And I've definitely not shared this one, but we're going to, because my version of the like pooping at the train station story is, so my dad died when I was 17 and he was in the hospital for 55 days and it was a whole traumatic thing. We literally, Cyrus, I'm not fucking kidding you. We get home from like the afternoon that my dad passed and my family friends come over to like, you know, mourn with us and be there and whatever.
Yeah.
My mom answered the door in a wedding veil and was like, I'm single. Like, that is my family in a fucking nutshell.
I've never told you that.
I've never told you that. It's like, I don't know, I forgot, you just unlocked that memory for me. But like the way my family, and listen, we face it fucking head on. Obviously I went to therapy, like I work in mental health.
Yeah.
The way you can face it is because that should, at some point, laughing is what helps you face the fucking thing.
What is like,
absolutely.
In the wedding veil.
Your mom's a fucking queen.
is-
Your mom's a G, truly.
And I will say, it's like sometimes my friends and I, when we talk about their my friend will like trauma dump. This happened last week, trauma dump, and then we'll both be like, "That was so fucking dark." Like we'll be like, "That is so dark." But again, I think to myself, I'm so grateful to like be here and to like do what I do. And it's just not fair for me to also not like just understand that there's a lot of fucking things that could be worse in my life. And I think that I'm never someone who plays like oppression Olympics. Like I'm like, who is the most like
right.
But I also I think it helps me realize when something's bad or like it's my anxiety monster.
Right.
And I'm like one time I remember like I was having multiple conversations with the voices in my head and the anxiety monster was one of them. And I just remember being like, you have to shut the fuck up right now. Shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up. I'll deal with you
It's
later.
not your turn to talk. Stop.
I'll deal with you later. I was like running late to something. I had to do this event. Someone was calling me. I was like, shut the fuck up. I'm busy. Like, I think that also helps me like really like just zone in and not give it power. And I think that's the biggest thing. Power is the most important thing. It's like someone's like, what is it? It's probably a very profound quote, and I don't know who quoted it, but or who said it. But it's like you can't hurt me without my permission. And I'm like, sometimes I don't know if that's always true, but sometimes I'm like, I'm not going to give you power right now. You need to fuck off. In 2 hours, I'll have a panic attack. That's fine. Right now, I need to be on set. I cannot faint. I can't shit. I need to just focus. And then later we can deal with this. How's that? So I'm like,
I'll put you in the separate room.
It's it's in the Google Calendar schedule.
It's so funny to me because I'm not naturally someone who like doesn't not have anxiety when I go to shoots, when I do red carpets. I have a shitload of anxiety, but I'm like, I don't have fucking time. Like I can't pencil you in. So that also is something that helps me too in just like my day-to-day as a creator. And I think people don't think that I have that. They're like, seriously, like you're so like you. I'm like, girl, you don't even fucking know half of it. You do not know. But you know, we're working on it. We're trying.
Oh my God. This is honestly such a fucking refreshing perspective for us to talk about because we've never really had. I mean, I feel like this has been the episode of Meta and I being like, we've never said this. We've never talked about this. But it's true. Like
you're getting us to spill all the tea, Cyrus.
You really are.
Oh,
love it.
Hey, that's the new moon theme. There's a new moon yesterday in Scorpio, and they said truths are going to be revealed, secrets come out. Like that's very Scorpio energy.
Here we go. Wait, what are your signs?
Taurus. Big three, baby. Let's do it.
Yeah. Okay. So Taurus sun. I'm like, what the fuck is my big three? Taurus sun, Aries moon, Capricorn rising.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
What about
Libra
you?
sun and rising. I'm like the most Libra you've ever met with a Sag moon.
God.
What about you?
Okay. I'm a third generation Gemini sun.
I love Geminis.
We hack a lot with that.
With Libra Geminis, like you guys have two sides, and I see on both sides like Chanel.
Yeah,
like that's my tagline.
Virgo Libra.
Yeah. I
think I perform more as my Virgo, to be honest.
I knew you had to have some Virgo in you.
Because Virgo's moon, Libra rising?
Yes. Like I think
sure,
opposite. So I think
really?
I think, and I'm dating a Taurus. Like I love Taurus.
I'm sorry. We're the most unproblematic. We're stubborn as fuck and annoying as fuck, but we're fucking great.
I'm telling you, Tauruses are fucking great. And I can deal with
the hell out of us.
Like Taurus men, they're like, I would take a Taurus man any fucking day over a Scorpio man. Like
period.
I will take a Taurus man because you can also like tame them a little bit. Like my boyfriend's a Taurus to the fucking bone, but he also is very sensitive. And I think like he has a lot to work with. But I will say it's my grandpa's birthday. My grandpa's birthday is June 1st. My mom is May 27th and I'm June 7th. So like the Gemini energy is very strong.
Okay.
But I love Gemini women. I love Gemini non-binary people, and Gemini men. It really just depends on what the rest of your chart is. Like we can work with it, but like
totally fair.
I don't know. It can be tough. I also think like again for me, one of the things that if there's anything that people can take away from my platform, I think is this idea that like if you're trusting your gut in the decisions that you make, you're the only person that's going to know whether or not the decision that you're going to like continue with is the decision that you should do. Like I all the time I tell people, they're like, I need dating advice. I'm like, I could give you dating advice until the cows come home. You're the only person that's going to do this. I know, like, I'm like, Even I'm the same way. People tell me and give me advice all the time, and I'm like,
Yeah.
no. I'm like, I have to get to the point where I'm gonna want to have to do it.
Mhm.
And I think that if my platform can be a reminder to at least keep it top of mind, I think that's the most important thing for me. Like,
100%.
I think, there are, like, not to get serious, but like, I sometimes forget that my impact and my influence, especially for queer people and like women and women of color, especially who are my biggest champions,
Mhm.
does impact the decisions that they make. Like, there was this woman who she messaged me about a month ago, and she was like, I had a very abusive ex. I don't want to talk about it. I'm never going to get into it, but I just want you to know that, like, I made the decision to leave them. Your videos really helped me through. And I was like, you know what? Like, that is so beyond what I ever thought my influence could be to
Mhm.
someone. And I don't need to know what their story was, and I don't want to know. It's like, it's their story.
Fair boundary, yeah.
But I do try and remind myself that although it's not that serious, I'm not saving lives, at least in some ways. I'm a reminder for people who are in the process of already doing it, if that
That's
makes
so
sense.
beautiful and
Yeah,
so
to make the
powerful. And
ripple effect.
honestly, perfect segue into what I wanted to ask you about, because you just posted a TikTok the other day that I
Yeah.
was like, I see
Oh my God, which one?
gentle
Oh,
parenting.
she sent it to me.
Gentle
I know what it
parenting,
is.
American
Yeah.
parents. And then you were talking about Middle Eastern parents. And I was like, oh, my Cuban mother is that.
Oh, I wrote Middle Eastern,
Any
but
immigrant
I meant
parent.
like,
Any immigrant
yeah,
parent.
Yeah.
And I think
100%.
your profile is such a beautiful depiction of family dynamics. And I love how much you
Oh,
feature your
totally.
dad. I love how you feature your brother and your family. Like, it's so incredible. And I think a lot of times, like, us immigrant parent children, it can be really easy for us to be like, especially now that mental health is so top of mind and we're
Yeah.
talking about all the things that fucking traumatized us,
Mhm.
it's really easy to be
Yeah.
like, fuck them, fuck how they raised us. Like, I get, yeah, like I hate my parents. I understand why they did, but fuck them anyway. And it's so easy to fall into that.
Yeah.
And wow, like having all those feelings and moving through that, and I'm not going to speak for anybody else's experience, is like super like that's valid and like do your thing. I think it's also so
Yeah.
important and beautiful
Yeah.
to like laugh at the shit that's hilarious that your parents did and understand like
Yeah.
that they were humans at the end of the day. Like pretty much everyone at the
Mhm.
like, you know, for the most part is doing the best they can with the tools they have. And so
Yeah.
I'm wondering just like if you have any advice for anybody who's watching your content or listening to this podcast that is maybe going through a moment where they don't know how to talk about their queerness. They don't know how to talk about their mental health with their families,
Yeah.
especially like in cultures where it's just so dismissed, ignored.
Yeah.
And that's like on the soft side of it.
I think what happens is when you're really close to someone, or not even emotionally, but physically, someone you grew up with. I also say this about people who think the same as you. When you say things, sometimes they don't listen, and sometimes they're not hearing the words that you're saying, and sometimes hearing another voice that's saying the exact same thing actually can make a difference. So when I worked in corporate America and I was working with a really tough client, and I really wanted them to buy an idea, I would, like, instead of just pitching the idea, I would sometimes let the work speak for itself. So I'd be like, for example, or let's say use another example. Let's say a client of mine would be like, we want to do Pride. And I say, you don't have a great relationship with the gays. And they'd be like, no, we think it's going to be great. And I'm like, okay, they're not listening.
Mhm.
I would send them articles of when brands have done this and gotten canceled. And when those words hit, they impact them.
Mhm.
Same with the way that I think about anybody who's having a difficult conversation. I always say, send them my content. Let them hear my dad say something. Let them read an article. Let them see a video that Alok, who's this incredible non-binary poet,
I'm
who's my mentors,
obsessed with them.
let them speak something and talk about an issue through a different medium like poetry.
Mm.
Try things out that aren't, because at the end of the day, you can try and like hit home. It's the same like when I talk about, it's very different when I'm trying to advocate for people to protect trans people. It's very different when my dad says it, because he is a cisgendered straight man, grew up very macho. He has a lot of toxic masculinity that he's unpacking. But if we're with a group of people, or he's on a construction site and someone says something problematic or homophobic or transphobic, if I say something, it's very different than if he says something, because they will listen, because they have a connection with him. So my biggest advice is, if the person that you want to get through to is not listening to you, sometimes, and not always, but sometimes the best option is to send them those same words through a different mouth. Because I have learned a lot through other people that I'm sure people that I'm close with have told me, but I needed to see it through another perspective. And also, at the end of the day, the other person has to want to learn.
Yeah.
I think there is no, like, why waste your time, trying to really do it. And I think the reason why people waste their time is because that person's family, that person used to be close with them, that person is the only person that has given them gratification, but on this particular issue, they're not supporting them. There's so many reasons. So I always try and be cognizant of that. And even with the relationship that I have with my dad, I want to celebrate it, because I want to sort of shut down a lot of the people that have created stereotypes that queer people can't have supportive family, especially Middle Easterners. But at the same time, I do want to be self-aware that at the end of the day, this isn't an experience that a lot of people have. So I don't want to be insensitive and be like, see, like, we overcame homophobia. Like, we haven't. But I do, like, again, I think I've tried to find this sort of, and again, I do it through comedy. I think comedy creates a buffer where sometimes, like, people who might not agree with me will see a video, like, when people are like, you're a man. And I'm like, could a man do this? And I'll do a dance move, because I'm like, it's so stupid. But then when I sort of, like, break the ice a little bit, people start to realize how silly everything is. And so I also think, like, humor has come into my content as a way for me to, like, reach people. I can't tell you how many times Midwestern moms follow me, these Houston moms that have a shit ton of money that will buy every product that I will repost. But when it comes to political issues, they're a little, But those women who DM me that are like, what's a trans and why are you making a big deal? And I'm like, okay, like, maybe she wants, and then we'll have a conversation and they learn. And I'm like, it's because I create a space where they can ask. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm creating it, and listen. If at the end of the day, I can sense that they're just being an asshole, I'm not wasting time. But it is different where sometimes I do see parents that want to learn and they're willing to listen. It just, they need a little bit of it, because you're right. Our parents are not perfect. People are not perfect. I really do believe that people learn. I think they have the capacity to learn. I've seen people change 180 in the way that they have thought about social issues. So I always say, give the benefit of the doubt until your gut is telling you that they're just there to fuck you. Like, it's just not even, like, going to be worth the conversation.
Oh my God, so fucking beautifully said.
Well,
truly.
We talk a lot about neural manifestation on here. And one of the things we say is this term called expanders, which means, like, if you see yourself in someone else and they are doing something that you want to do eventually, or, like, have some aspect of what you want, it can quite literally expand your brain, expand your perspective to see that something's possible for yourself. You do that. Like, your presence, your philosophy, your point of view, the way you share, your humor, like, your unique being and everything you've collected to be who you are, you sharing that is the expander, and that's the ripple effect you have. So, like, maybe you don't take things seriously. Maybe you're like, I'm not a heart surgeon, but, like, that ripple effect is monumental and deserves to have, like, a place to land where you feel that. Because it's huge.
I say this, and I've said this to a few people, like, I wish, and it has nothing to do with my parents. It's nothing to do with anyone personal. I'm not calling anyone out, but I wish that there were certain people that told me they were proud of me before I had to prove it. So I always tell younger people that you don't need to have the platform that I have. You don't need to have the success. You don't need to have that for you to be proud of yourself. And I think that's the thing that we miss a lot, is that we think that it goes back to deserving a place. We have to earn that. You don't have to earn that. That's fucking bullshit. You don't have to earn shit. I shouldn't have, and I think here's the thing too, I shouldn't have to have a platform. I shouldn't have to have an influence for people to take me fucking seriously. And I think that's the biggest thing about this industry. I shouldn't have to have that. I'm privileged that people take me seriously now because I have a platform, especially when it's like something bad happens or someone says something problematic and I call them out. I'm like, I shouldn't, this shouldn't happen in general. I'm lucky that I have a platform to do it. But I think on the other side of it too, it's like a lot of people feel like they have to earn their love. And that's not, I don't see it that way at all, you know? And
You're
unfortunately that is
born
how,
enough.
and I know it sounds so fucking cheesy, but it's like, it's really true. There are people that I feel like I had to earn their support, and that's fucked. You don't need to earn anyone's support. It's just, it's either they're there or they're not.
100%. Okay, you talked about advocacy from one perspective, and I want to flip it on its head because I've heard you say, I don't want to get it wrong, but you said something about like being supported in the way that you didn't ask for isn't support, it's tolerance. Something along those lines. And it really kind of reminds me of love languages. Like if people aren't familiar with that type of allyship, like just because you like receiving love a certain way, you giving it that way may not be what they're asking for at all, and actually could be more detrimental. Like it's not really bridging that gap. So I'd love to hear your advice for the other side of the coin of those people that like want to learn how to ask, how to set the question, like how to support and how to advocate for someone or show up for someone in the way they're asking for.
100%. I think one of the examples that I use is like, I say this to people, I'm like, you're not allowed to come to my platform and consume the parts of me that you like, or that you agree with, or that are convenient to you. It's not fair to me. Like one time I posted something about the rise of like trans violence happening specifically with Black trans women in New York. The data that we have aggregated, we don't have a lot of data, but the data that we do have aggregated just shows that the rising hate crimes are continuing to trend upwards when it comes to the lack of protection against like Black trans women. And I had people be like, well, why, like, why would you share? Like, we don't need to, like, your page is about that. And I'm like, you're not allowed to just like come kiki and laugh and take my dating advice and not like, at least give me the opportunity to speak about things that are so fundamental to me. And when I say it that way, people seem to click. Like this woman, she was like, oh, like another political like agenda, something like, loved your comedy, guess I have to unfollow. And I was like, and I asked her, I said, why were you following me in the beginning? She was like, well, I loved your videos and I loved it. I was like, everything that I'm about, every part of me that exists is political. There's nothing about me that's not political. You're just choosing to ignore it. So unfollow me. That's fine. And then I think that got through to her. I was like, I'm also not telling you to go repost about like the rising rates of like I'm not asking you to do that. I'm just saying like people need to, I think, stop policing the way that creators and frankly strangers show up for the communities that mean the most to them. You don't have to be on the same page, but if that's enough to get you to want to unfollow me, you are just consuming the parts of me that were convenient to you.
Yeah. Yep. And how dare you also try and tell me who I am and what I'm allowed to post. Right. Yes. You hit the nail on the head. I feel like everything you're saying, you're just leaving me. I talk a lot and I'm just listening to you talk and I'm shutting the fuck up because I'm like, you are remarkable.
No. Rambling. So you also have to cut me off.
No.
But I genuinely believe it. And I also think it's like a lot of the times, to be honest, like I'm not an activist. My platform, I try and advocate for issues. I think what happens though is it happens a lot of like white people come to my page and they like also assume I'm an activist. And I'm like, I'm not. I'm like, I'm brown and I'm queer and non-binary, but I'm not an activist. It doesn't just make me an activist.
Assume
like, I'm like,
you couldn't have gone to Paris, but you're an activist. Like, there's a lot of assumptions.
Yeah, like also like activists. It's a very, very like I would never give myself that title. Like I know people that have dedicated their lives to it, their platforms, their channels. But and I think part of it is also like it gets a little bit lost in the weeds with what I do because I am so vocal about the issues that mean the most to me. But also I think sometimes people forget like my platform is my business, it's my career. It's like sometimes I have to prioritize talking about beauty and talking about skincare and honoring the brands and the timelines and the things that I've worked on. And I think that's a tricky balance. It has been for the past 2 years, but I just have to constantly remind myself, a part of it is a huge part of my platform is my career. But I think there's always, I always try and find a nice balance and try the best that I can to do it. But you know, it's life. I can't please
Mhm.
everyone. Just I could say
Oh
everything
my
the way
gosh.
that people want. I'm just
Mhm.
not going to. So
I think that's the one thing that makes me hopeful about the future is like the way the internet is going is like they don't like at least a bigger majority of us in the past don't want one-dimensional
Right.
content anyway. Like I'm
yeah,
so uninterested in just a beauty page that doesn't also share their passions with me. Like
yeah,
I
yeah,
don't want to
totally.
see one version of someone. I
Mhm.
want to
Yeah,
see hold sides for every
multifaceted.
different thing.
Yeah,
Because I know even growing up, that made me I was so interested in so many different things and I didn't know which one I wanted to pick. And it
yeah,
made me feel like master of
Yeah.
none, like okay at everything. You know
yes,
what I mean? Like, but that's
100%.
everyone is so multifaceted. Like normalizing that, talking about that more, bringing that into such an integral part of yourself and sharing that with others without being like, don't label me as an activist. This is something
100%.
I'm passionate about that holds a lot of
I can just be
weight.
Yes.
passionate about it.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes, and bring that
listen,
into this without you having to like label me as this my type
I know,
of
Yeah.
content or
I know,
whatever. I
yeah,
do think we want more of that nowadays in specific
I think
communities,
so
which is
too.
true,
nice.
My editor
it's true.
friend, she's an incredible editor at Architectural Digest. Her name's Sydney Gore. We love you, Sydney. And she's been incredibly helpful for me in terms of just helping me think through, like, for example, Latin Heritage Month, Hispanic Heritage Month rolls around. The
Mhm.
inbound that I get,
Yeah, yeah,
and she's a Black woman. She's like, oh, February rolls around, the inbound that I get. And she's always telling me, she's like,
Mhm.
write those stories. I know that you love like elevating like specifically Latina women. Like, do your thing, sister. She's like, but don't let yourself be pigeonholed because I know that you have other passions and you, just
yeah,
like
Right.
Brittany from Michigan, is allowed to write about whatever she fucking wants to write about.
Mhm.
You should be allowed to write about whatever the fuck you want to write about too. And you can talk about these
yeah,
amazing things as well. And I think that like your page is
yeah,
such a beautiful representation of that. And you're like, yes. And we talked about it earlier. Like I'm sick of talking about all my intersectionalities. Like you have so many
Right.
beautiful facets to make up the person that you are. Why force you to fucking choose one? Because it's not you. You're all of it.
Oh my god. Yeah.
yeah, and I'm trying. It's like come June. I know those
Yeah.
brands.
Oh
Like
yeah.
they've literally gotten proposals for campaigns June 2nd for Pride, and I'm like, I filmed everything in May, sweetie. We're over.
Yeah.
We're done. What's next? But I know, but I appreciate that, and I also I just want. I think the thing that I want the most is for a while I thought I only wanted people who thought
Mhm.
like me and who were fundamentally very much the same as me. Obviously, like caveat, I don't want fucking like white supremacists following me. Like that shit's
Mhm.
scary. But like I always thought that I just wanted people to fall, and I don't. I want people who can come to me and question things, and if I can impact them in some type of
Mhm.
way, that's great. Like I've realized that again. I grew up in a fucking bubble. I went to college in a fucking bubble, and we don't live in a
Mhm.
bubble. And there are
Mhm.
people who just truly don't think the way that we do. And I think within the boundaries of respect, I'm able to be there to talk about beauty and talk about pride, but like also like I don't know, geek out about shit that like people would never imagine. So
Right.
I'm that's the journey that I'm on, and I'm really grateful for it. I think it's going really well, and I'm making people laugh, which is like a
Ugh.
privilege. It's great.
And it's also such a
Yeah.
more real experience. Like it's literally why we named the show Thoughts May Vary. Like why
Yeah.
I want to assume that I know nothing. Why would I want an echo
Mhm.
chamber around me? How is that going to help me grow, see the real
No,
picture of something?
no.
Like we joked before, your reality is so different from my reality. Like how am I supposed to get a clearer comprehensive picture unless we
Mhm.
disagree, have all these things? Anyway, the fun one to end on, because I think we're posting this in a couple weeks, so it's going to be like big holiday
Mhm.
season, is what is like one or a couple like really feel good inner child holiday things that you're going to lean into this year, whether it's like self care or activities or.
Ooh, okay. So my brother loves specifically, very specifically, the peppermint bark from Williams
I
Sonoma.
Oh
understand.
my God,
I
my mother,
understand.
don't get me started. Oh my God, every year it's a
My
fucking,
mom buys
yeah,
like 8 of those tints
Mhm.
for him. So
it's
I just
crazy.
with a hot chocolate, he just and I love my brother is not he doesn't really have a sweet tooth and I do, so it's like nice to be able to have. So I'm very excited. We're all gonna be home. We're gonna be skiing for my dad's knees are good. He had surgery, so we're gonna be skiing
Oh
for the
Fun.
first
wow.
time ever. I'm really excited about. And I I'm really excited. I'm going to tell everyone else to fuck off in my life. And for one day, I'm gonna go to Newbury Street, which is in Boston, where I'm gonna be home, and I'm going to shop alone. I'm not
Oh, yes.
anyone. I'm not bringing.
Yeah.
I love my mom. I always shop with her, and like I love shopping with my family. I want to be alone
Yep.
in a department store with a glass of champagne, and I
Yes.
feel like I'm excited to be alone and celebrate myself
Yeah.
and the
Headphones
accomplishments.
on, talk to no
Mhm.
one, make it your
God,
own.
have a shopping
Yeah.
day alone. I haven't
Oh,
done that. I don't think I've done that since like college. Like
yeah.
I'm excited to do that. I will be very much around my family full time, but I'm really, 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 really excited for that. And also, there will be some fun announcements coming, hopefully in that time frame. So if you
Ooh.
with me, great. I am on Instagram, I'm on TikTok, and I'm on Snapchat,
We'll
and
have
it's just
all of the links, of course.
perfect. Cyrus Veyssi. So stay tuned.
Oh my gosh, my heart can't
Oh,
take it. I'm like, tell me now.
exciting.
This was
I
so
know.
freaking fun. Thank you so much for taking the time. Like, we are
Oh my gosh.
truly, seriously,
It's
such
my
fans of you. So thank
pleasure.
you.
Oh my god, I'm so glad we
Yeah.
finally got to do this. Thank you so, so, so much.
How's it going, y'all? It's Aaron. Don't let your Monday suck. Don't have those Sunday scaries. I'm tired of everybody waking up in the week saying, shit, it's Monday. You know what goes down? TMV releases every week on Mondays. Make sure you rate and review wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're watching YouTube, yes, TMV has a YouTube. Be sure to subscribe and ring that noti bell and never miss a thing. And also, join the TMV familia by joining the Thoughts May Vary Patreon and by following at Thoughts May Vary Pod on Instagram and TikTok. Thank you for listening.
Great.
There you go.
Thanks, AB.
Got y'all.